Hi, this is Keith Scott. Welcome to the Untold Secrets of the Martial Arts Industry. Today's topic is going to be handling objections during your enrollment. Now, we have the perfect setting today for handling objections. We're here in Cape Canaveral, Florida, which is the home of NASA and the space program. As you can see, we have a picture of the space shuttle behind us. Just think about all the objections and challenges that NASA has had to overcome to put a man into space. If we can do that, then we can handle these objections while we're trying to enroll people into our martial arts school. There's three categories that all of the objections are going to fall into. These three categories are price, value, and commitment. When you're enrolling a person and they have an objection, you automatically in your mind want to categorize it, the objection as to whether it's price, value, or commitment. And that's going to help you overcome the objection simpler, because now you're going to know how to handle it faster because you're categorizing it. It's kind of like if you're sparring, the first thing to identify is whether they're throwing a punch at you or a kick at you, and you know how to respond faster. The first one we're going to discuss today is value. Value is the easiest one to overcome, but it has a very specific time in which we need to overcome the value objection. Value must be presented before we go over price. Now, we have spent a whole video in this series discussing how to present the value in your program, and that is through the use of a new student folder. Now, the new student folder should have very specific things that you do in your martial arts school besides the punches and kicks, which will add value to the program. And this is done before they object, which has to be done before we go over the price. If we build value in our program after we go over price or after they object, then what happens is it seems like we are trying to justify the value, we're trying to justify the price, or we're trying to justify the commitment, or we're making an excuse for some of those things. So watch the video on the new student folder and what should be in it, and make sure we do the value presentation before we discuss the prices. Now, we're going to move on to the two more common objections, which are the commitment and the price. Now, we're going to handle the price one first. There's several parts of the price objection. The first price objection could be the timing. It's not that they can't really afford the down payment or the initial payment. It's just that they don't get paid until next week or until 2 weeks. So they just need a little more time. If that's the situation, what we would do is very simply go ahead and fill out your agreement and then get them to give you a method of payment, which you can do when they get paid. They could give you a check, which you could post-date if that's allowed in your state. You could get a credit card or debit card and charge them whenever they get paid, or you could simply let them bring the payment back in whenever their paycheck goes through. But go ahead and get them to commit by filling out the agreement right then and there. Now, so if it's not timing, the problem with the down payment or the initial investment could be that they just can't afford it. So they can afford $100 a month for your regular tuition, but they can't afford a $200 or more down payment. In that instance, the best thing to do is to allow them to break the down payment up into smaller payments. Maybe they pay you $100 now, and then they're going to break it up into $25 or $50 payments over the next few months and tack that onto their monthly tuition. That is a way to spread out the down payment so it's not going to be a burden on them up front. Now, if it's not the down payment, but they just can't afford the program period, so they can't afford your regular tuition, that's a much bigger challenge to handle. So what we need to do is use a technique called breaking it down to the ridiculous. Again, this is called breaking it down to the ridiculous, and this is a technique that we use when they can't afford the monthly tuition. The first thing that we want to do when we use this technique is to identify an amount that they can pay, or to ask them how much did they think martial arts classes were going to cost. And either one of those questions will work the same. And let's say our monthly tuition is $100 a month, but they said that they could only afford $60 a month. What we will do is we'll take a legal pad or a notepad, or you can use a blank sheet of paper, and we're going to write down their answer. So if they say $60 is the amount that they thought they were going to pay or that they could afford, we would write down $60. The next thing to do is to write the payment amount of your monthly tuition, to write that on top of it. So we're going to create a math equation. So we have the number 60. Above that, we're going to write the number 100. To finish off the math equation, what we're going to do is we're going to write a minus sign beside 60, and then we're going to write a bar underneath 60, and then we'll do the subtraction. So 100 minus 60 is $40. The next step is to break the $40 down into a daily amount. Now the reason that this $40 amount is the key figure is that the problem isn't that they can't pay $100. We have to identify the problem is that they can only not afford the $40 that's left over. So we're already starting to narrow it down from $100 down to $40. Now we're going to bring it down into an even smaller amount, which is a daily amount. Now, some of the months have 28 days and some of them have more days. So what we're going to use is we're going to use the lowest number of days in a month because that's going to give us the highest daily amount. If we try to use 31 days, you're going to have some parent to say, hey, some of the days have fewer days, so that amount should be lower. Trust me. So what we want to do is we want to take the dollar amount that's the difference, which is $40 in this instance, and we'll divide it by the 28 days. And that's going to give us $1.42 per day. Now we will literally draw that math out. So we've got 40 divided by 28 is going to equal $1.42 per day. You're going to write that on your legal pad or your blank sheet of typing paper. The next step is to identify a daily consumable item that this parent uses that costs $1.42 or more. And then we would suggest that they could possibly give that up so that their student can get confidence, focus, discipline, whatever the benefit that they wanted out of martial arts training for their child. And I start that out by giving them an example of what I would consume daily. So I would start out and say, wow, $1.42 per day. And I would kind of shake my head and then I go, now, I don't know about you, but I'm a tea person. I like tea in the morning, you know. What do you do on a daily basis? You know, do you do coffee or tea or Coke or do you just do bottled water? Or what's your thing that you normally do every day? And then they're going to say something like, wow, I'm a coffee person. You know, I got to have my Starbucks. And then they'll usually tell you what they drink at Starbucks, you know, and the type of drink it is. They may say that they, you know, have a Coke every day or bottled water. Whatever they tell you, then, you know, I'll look at them and I go, well, you know, I know that my tea that I normally get, that costs $1.75 per day. How about, you know, your Starbucks or whatever they drink? And then they'll say, oh, that costs $1.80, you know, or that's $3.75 or whatever their dollar amount is that they're going to tell you. And what we would do is I would just do the big dramatic, you know, William Shatner pause. And then I would look at them and say, wow, you know, your Starbucks, that's $3.75 per day. You know, I think that it would be, you know, worth giving up, you know, your Starbucks just every other day so that, you know, your child, so that Sarah can end up getting that confidence that you wanted her to get so that she can make friends. And then we use a tie down. And the way we use a tie down is we say, I'm sure you agree. And once you say, I'm sure you agree, you'll nod your head up and down, and then the parent has to agree that giving up a Starbucks once every other day is worth their child getting confidence or focus or discipline or whatever they wanted them to get out of your program. So I'm going to review the steps to breaking it down to the ridiculous. Step number 1 is to identify the monthly amount that they're prepared to pay. Step number 2 is to turn it into a math equation. So we would write down the dollar amount, $60, and then the 100, the minus sign, the bar, do the subtraction, which is $40 per month. That's the difference that they can't afford to pay. Second is step after we've done the math equation is to do our second equation. We're going to take 40 divided by 28 days, which is going to give us $1.42 per day. Then we will identify a daily consumable item that we use on a daily basis, and then ask them what they use on a daily basis that they consume. A drink is normally the best thing. And then we will make the suggestion that it's worth them giving up that daily consumable item every day or every other day, once a week, depending on the price of it, in order for their child to get the benefits. So you have to tie that daily consumable item into the benefits that they want their child to receive. This is called breaking it down to the ridiculous. This is the best way to overcome the monthly tuition objection. Another thing that we can do is we can offer for them to pay for the program in full by getting a discount. Now, some people have a problem with paying the monthly tuition amount, but when you show them that they can save 15% off of their program by paying in full, they find a way to pay in full to save that money. As crazy as that sounds, they can't afford $60, $100 a month, but they're going to find a way to give you $1,000, $1,100 for the program. Something else that we can do is we can offer to have them make a larger down payment, and then that's going to reduce their monthly payments. Some people go for that as well. Now, at some point, if they just can't afford your program, then they can't afford your program. Depending on the style of martial arts you teach, we normally base our classes on 2 weeks attendance. They have to come twice a week in order to learn the material and in order to continue progressing at the normal pace. Depending on your style of martial arts, you may be able to offer them to only take classes 1 day a week, which will reduce their monthly tuition amount. I don't recommend this if you teach forms, katas, patterns, and if you do a lot of self-defense in your program. They're just not usually going to be able to remember the information, but that's going to depend on your style. Now, the next thing that I want to discuss is the commitment objection. The commitment objection is more prevalent if you have a 12-month program that you're asking people to enroll for your basic program. You have to first identify who has the commitment objection. Does the parent have the commitment objection? Is it the child that has the commitment objection? Or is the parent putting it on the child? Or is it not either one of them? Is it just something that they've heard over and over that they're not supposed to sign a contract? So we're going to hit each of those. So if it's the parent that has the commitment objection, what you want to do is listen to their language. The parent may say, you know, I just have a problem with enrolling for 12 months, and they'll be very intense and very animated when they're saying it. If they're saying that, notice they're saying, I have a problem with it. If they're saying that they have a problem with it, dig in a little more and say, well, you know, why is it that you have a challenge with, enrolling Sarah for 12 months? And then literally one of my coaching clients one time told me, this parent, sat there and she started telling me this story about how when she was a little girl, her mom made her do piano lessons every single week, twice a week. She hated the piano, and this went on, until she became a teenager, and it just had this very traumatic effect on her when she was a child. And so she asked me how I would respond to that. And I said, what you should have done is you should have looked that parent in the eye and you should have said, now, Mrs. Smith, I understand that your mother made you do piano lessons, and that was something that you didn't want to do, and that had a very negative effect on you as a child, and I can see that it's still bothering you today. Now, what we want to make sure that doesn't happen with your daughter, Sarah, is that something that your mom did to you, we don't want to let that affect your daughter today. So, Sarah obviously wants to take martial arts lessons. Isn't that right? So we use a tie down, and she's going to say yes. Now, once she says yes to that, then what we'll do is we'll say, well, let's make sure that you don't do the same thing that your mother did to you, which was making, your child do piano lessons. Let's make sure that we don't do that in reverse. Let's not keep Sarah from doing martial arts lessons because your mom made you do piano. And then I would take the contract, turn it around, slide it around, and then I would simply put the pen beside there, and this parent will have no choice but to enroll their child in martial arts classes because they don't want to be like their mother. So first identify if it's the parent. Now, if it's the child that has the objection, the commitment